Did you know that Squanto was in London, England, the same time William Shakespeare was living and writing plays? If this sounds like a surprising story and you want to learn more, then stick around because that's what we're covering right now on That Shakespeare Life. Here in the US, we often talk about the story of Squanto around the time of Thanksgiving because Squanto was one of the major players that helped the Pilgrims survive their first harsh winter here in the New World. But when you look back at his life, you'll find that his timeline overlaps that of William Shakespeare, and Squanto was even in England during Shakespeare's lifetime. Which raises the question of whether or not Shakespeare could have seen Squanto when he came to London. Did Squanto see any of Shakespeare's plays? To find out the answer to these questions, I sat down with Dr. Alden Vaughan, Professor Emeritus of Columbia University and author of Transatlantic Encounters American Indians in Britain from 1500 to 1776. Here's what he had to say. Alden writes about one particular Native American who people in the United States often grow up reading about, especially this time of year, the man named Squanto. Alden explains that Squanto was arrested for trying to negotiate peace between Plymouth and the native tribes, and that it was Captain Miles Standish which established Squanto as the main intercultural advisor to the English colonists. Alden, when William Bradford wrote about Squanto, quote, having been in England, was Squanto visiting England in a capacity which would have placed him in the vicinity of Shakespeare? Could Shakespeare have seen or known about Squanto?
Oh, absolutely. They were both in London at the same time, so it is possible. But let me clarify a bit. Uh, he wasn't exactly arrested. He was seized by other Indians because Squanto was quite a manipulator, both in his own interests and on behalf of the Plymouth colony, with neighboring chieftains. And he seems to have quite successfully for the time negotiated with the Wampanoag chieftain Massasoit to have good relations between the tribe and the Plymouth colony. But some other native leaders were resentful and seized Squanto and probably would have taken his life if Miles Standish hadn't stepped in and rescued Squanto. Squanto died only a year or so later, but was terribly valuable to the colonists. But getting back to England, there's no evidence that the two crossed paths, but it's quite possible. Squanto had been kidnapped off the New England coast in 1614 and initially went to Spain, somehow got out of captivity in Spain and ended up in England living with the treasurer of the Newfoundland Society in London. And the paths between Shakespeare and Squanto very well may have intersected. Yeah.
There are many facets to the story of Squanto worth exploring, not the least of which is his help to the Pilgrims in the New World. But there are so many other incredible moments to learn about him as well. If you'd like to learn more about the story of Squanto, the founding of Jamestown, and even more about the Pilgrims and how all of that interrelates with the life of William Shakespeare, then you can listen to our entire interview with Dr. Alden Vaughan on our podcast, That Shakespeare Life, by visiting CassidyCash.com/episode 84. That's CassidyCash.com/EP84. That's it for this week. Thank you for watching. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.